So Allison Lee won't be joining us in person. She has recorded her, at the beginning, because she has recorded her keynote, her speech, rather. It says, the appendix, the breakdown, the breakthrough, a story of hope and resilience. So I'd love to introduce Allison by saying that she's a mental health advocate, a peer educator, lived experience speaker. And after being diagnosed with borderline personality disorder at the age of 27, Allison felt her life was over. She spent a great deal of her 30s isolated, refusing to go outside, pretending everything was just fine. In 2021, an acute mental health crisis brought upon an exploding appendix, connected with her a team of psychologists who made her feel felt and seen. Sorry, I misread that a little bit. And then a team of peer workers, which is where she believes she became unstoppable. Since then, Allison has been involved in mental health advocacy in the Southeastern Sydney Local Health District. If I can just flip the page here. She's now a peer educator at the Recovery and Wellbeing College, deputy chair of the SESLHD Consumer Advisory Group, and is completing her international peer support training. She's an accomplished lived experience speaker and co-presented with her husband as a consumer carer team at multiple international academic conferences. She lives in Sydney with her husband and 3 cats. So more cats, I love that. And I would love to cue her recording for us all to soak in, and then Allison will be joining us for some Q&A afterwards. So keep those conversations coming through. Thank you so much.
Howdy. Firstly, before I begin, I would like to thank the Finding North team for inviting me here to be here today at this e-symposium with you all. It's my absolute delight to be here presenting amongst so many remarkable and accomplished people. And frankly, I can't really believe that I'm here for many reasons. So let me introduce myself. My name is Allison Lee. It used to be Allison Briggs, but then I got married. The year is 2024, and I am now unbelievably 41 years old. I live in a nice big house in Darawal country with my husband and partner of 21 years and 3 very silly cats. What I have experienced is over, and I am a survivor because I am still here. What I have just said to you is not only my introduction to you all today, but it is also a coping mechanism that I have developed to deal with flashbacks called the epilogue. It is my way of cementing my progress by telling my story in reverse, starting from the present moment and by reaffirming how different the now is from what has passed before. It also helps me to realize that in order to heal from mental distress, we must remain in the present and seek out coping mechanisms in the here and now. Nothing good, in my opinion, can be gained from endlessly ruminating over a very painful past. And to be honest, I feel like Allison Briggs, a sufferer of complex mental health conditions, including but not limited to borderline personality disorder, depression, agoraphobia, and anxiety, has now been replaced by Allison Lee, me, who has a lived experience of receiving a diagnosis of BPD and still has to deal with complex post-traumatic stress responses, but I am now completely focused on recovery. But it took me quite some time to get to this point. So let me explain. My early life was a bit dysfunctional. We might say, if we were going to use very polite, detached clinical language to describe it, that I was raised in an invalidating environment and have a background of major developmental trauma. On this basis, I was formally diagnosed with a condition called borderline personality disorder in 2009 by a psychiatrist who had 2 major flaws. The first one was that he was wearing a bow tie. I'm certain that if I ever wrote an autobiography, there would be a chapter in it called Beware of Psychiatrists Wearing Bow Ties. The other flaw was that he very thoughtfully didn't even bother to inform me of the diagnosis. I actually found out in a post-discharge interview with a social worker who was nonchalantly flipping through my clinical notes and who said, it says here that you've been diagnosed with BPD. And she flipped the notes around and showed me what the psychiatrist had written, and I had hit 6 of the 9 criteria necessary for a diagnosis. Go me. I have since been told by many psychologists that being diagnosed with BPD is supposed to be a life-affirming event, which makes me laugh a little bit externally and quite a lot internally, because really, you're serious? And the reason for this opinion, and the reason why my diagnosis was not a life-affirming event, is because I had already internalized a lot of the stigma surrounding this disorder due to the understandable but ultimately regrettable decision to play Dr. Google and research BPD online. I went to a very dark and unholy place on the internet called Reddit, or as I now call it, the internet's armpit, where the worst things imaginable were said about women with BPD. If you can think of every single negative, misogynistic epithet that could ever apply to a woman, it was used to apply to BPD as a disorder in total. People with BPD are psychos, they're manipulative, they're drama queens, they're attention seekers, and if you figure out that your girlfriend has BPD, run away, run for your life. But there was one comment on that Reddit forum that really got to me, and it said, "Don't attempt to fix them. You can't help them." I even read a book around this time written by 2 clinicians who shall remain nameless on this occasion, called I Hate You, Don't Leave Me, which was ostensibly designed to help people who would receive the diagnosis of BPD. And in this book, these 2 clinicians described many clients that they had seen over the years in extremely judgmental and negative terms. And I remember the prologue of that book stating that, and I quote, "Even with therapy, the long-term prognosis for sufferers of BPD is very poor. The condition is largely untreatable. Ask any clinicians who their least favourite clients are, and they will answer without hesitation those with borderline personality disorder." End quote. Which begs 2 questions, really. Firstly, if I am so untreatable and unfixable, is there even any point in trying to get better? And secondly, if psychologists and psychiatrists secretly hate me that much, why would I cooperate with them? Post-diagnosis, I was also given no meaningful follow-up, no referrals, no outgoing outpatient support. My husband wasn't connected to any carer support either. At the time of my diagnosis, I was seeing a psychologist privately in the community, and I was simply told to continue with her. And evidently, this was enough. In one of my later sessions with this psychologist, I revealed that I had been diagnosed with BPD, and I said to her half jokingly, "You know, maybe there's no point in this continuing the way it is because, I mean, I have BPD, so I guess I'm unfixable now, right?" And she said to me, I kid you not, "You're only unfixable if I can't fix you." Straight A's for arrogance. And I was like, yeah, that comment really rubbed me up the wrong way. And soon I stopped going, and understandably, that therapeutic relationship fizzled out. After this, I became hesitant to jump into therapy and try again. And my husband and I didn't so much as fall through the cracks as much as we both hurtled headfirst into a ravine. I spent the next 6 or 7 years fully embracing the fact that I would never get better, and alternating between seeking out CBT in the vain hope that I would, and giving in to completely self-destructive impulses. I was exhausted and traumatized, and I was desperate to establish safety of any kind. And as a result, I began to withdraw from the outside world and isolate myself socially. But over time, this went too far. I had always been an anxious person and an introvert, and I'd always enjoyed my own company and all that. But one day, after spending approximately 3 months of being indoors, and I mean literally not even opening the front door with all of my blinds and shutters down level of inside, I realized that my self-isolation wasn't a preference anymore. It wasn't that I didn't want to go outside. I literally couldn't go outside. But at least I was safe, right? I was no longer generating any drama of any kind or getting into trouble for the most part. I mean, sure, I wasn't living a rich, full life, but as far as I was concerned, what did that matter? I'd already given up. I'd settled. I believed that a life of meaning and possibility wasn't going to happen for me, and the best that I could hope for was stability. But over time, I did get some function back. My husband is a very remarkable person, and we did some exposure therapy together. And with him, I could go outside to some safe places for a few hours or so with him, and a few sensory aids, my beloved little squishy toys, to make sure that I didn't panic. But as for making plans for the future, I only really envisioned more of the same. After all, I had BPD. I was supposed to be unfixable, right? But it was around November 2021 that Allison Lee, a long-term sufferer of BPD and agoraphobia, made a momentous decision. I had taken a risk and I had begun to take Auslan classes online, Australian Sign Language, and I very quickly fell in love with the language. I'd felt better about myself than I had in quite some time, and I began to dream about possibilities for the future. I'd started to plan a career as an Auslan interpreter, and I remember thinking, Eureka, I found it. This is exactly what I want to do with my life. I'm going to go out to the world now because I finally believe that I have something worthwhile to contribute. I'm going to give it my best shot. I have decided to live. Of course, I didn't know how I was going to get from point A, where I was then, to point B, where I wanted to be, but I was certainly on the right track, right? I'd taken the first step. I felt like I was on top of the world. I'd felt more hopeful about the future than I ever had. And then 2 days later, my appendix exploded. And no, that's not a joke. You think it's a joke. It actually happened. And whilst my physical recovery from the emergency appendectomy all went fine, emotionally I unraveled. When I came home from the hospital, I sort of began to question this event in terms of its larger philosophical significance. And I was engaged in a silent conversation with God, as I understand him, most of the time. I would say things like, how could I have decided to live at long last and feel so good about myself and my life and then literally almost die? Are you serious, God? Are you testing my resolve? Am I being sent a message? What on earth is happening? Do you even want me to live? And I couldn't sleep. I had constant thoughts about death. I was having recurrent panic attacks, and scarily enough, I was being woken up in my sleep by panic attacks. This hopelessly negative train of thought continued and became more self-defeating, and eventually it spiraled out of control. And it took me to the darkest place imaginable. A place I know quite well. A place I hate. And 1 week after I came home from the surgery, my husband and I went back to the exact same ED that had saved my life a week before with an emergency appendectomy, asking them to save my life again for a completely different reason. But as it turns out, something in the universe was being reconfigured, and God, as I understand him, was working in very mysterious ways. Through this event, I was placed in contact with the very resources and people who have helped me move from point A to point B. And one of the first psychologists who saw me at Sutherland Hospital was an absolutely adorable woman who my husband and I nicknamed Lady Wendy. She sat us both down in her office and she began to talk about different therapeutic techniques and which directions we might like to take upon our recovery journeys. And when she used that word recovery, I was triggered and baffled. I said to myself, recovery, Wendy, what are you talking about? My long-term prognosis is supposed to be poor. I have BPD. I'm unfixable. And she said, no, Allison, no. we're going to think about this in a completely different way. You have complex trauma. You behave the way you do due to coping mechanisms that you developed as a child to survive what you went through. These coping mechanisms helped you at the time, but they're not so helpful now, and that's okay. You can develop new skills with new forms of therapy to help you cope in more self-affirming ways. You can recover, and you will recover. And I remember tears welling up in my eyes because up until this point, I had genuinely, truly never believed that recovery was possible. After this meeting, I began to identify as someone in active recovery as opposed to someone who had not been living well for much of my adult life. I have opinions as to why therapy with CBT weren't effective at treating my trauma. And if CBT works for you, go you, but it certainly didn't work for me. I would describe receiving cognitive behavior therapy for BPD as trying to rejig the plumbing on a house when the house is on fire. I truly believed at my core that I was shameful, defective, dysfunctional, unfixable, which caused me to continuously self-sabotage. Trying to interrupt and challenge negative thoughts did not work. It just made me more frustrated. And when the therapy failed, I felt like a failure too. Fixing the plumbing on a house is important, but what's most important is putting out the house fire first. You need to fix the root problem, which at its core is an issue regarding attachment. So what made the difference this time in my recovery? What put out the house fire? For me, it wasn't any kind of clinical intervention. It wasn't a psychiatrist. It wasn't a psychologist. It was a peer worker. I was put into contact with a peer worker named Bridget at Sutherland Hospital. And in the 6 sessions I had with her, I believe that I achieved more than I had with over 10 years of intermittent contact with psychologists. She was much younger than me, but that didn't matter. She was someone who understood. She was someone that got it. She provided the validation, the support, and the understanding that I have been looking for my entire adult life. There was no judgment. I didn't have to explain anything to her because she'd been in the dark places too. And she didn't approach me from the uneven power dynamic that exists between a clinician and a patient. She came to me as my equal, as my friend. She was my living, breathing model of recovery. And I think that it is possible to split my life into 2 parts, pre-Bridget and post-Bridget, considering the impact that she had. And here's the thing. Through Bridget, my husband and I found a network of peer workers at my local safe haven who, over time, they know this, became my extended family. But at first, I struggled to connect to them a little bit. They didn't rush the connection, but at the same time, I really couldn't put anything past them. One time I was at my local safe haven and I was struggling with distress. And one of the peer workers came and approached me and sat down with me and said, Allison, I understand that you have no reason to trust me. I know that. But I knew from the moment you walked in here that you had a big story. And the reason I know that is because I've got a big story too. All I want you to know is that I am here for you. And there's nothing you can do or say that will make me run away. All I'm asking you to do is to take a risk and reach out and put your trust in another human being. Just one more time. And I did. And I could. And over time, I realized that I wasn't unfixable. Far from it. I just understandably struggled to connect to people due to trauma. I had made the mistake of believing that I could heal in isolation and then go out into the big bad world fixed and function. Impossible. Healing cannot occur without connection and community. And the most important thing that I learned upon my recovery journey was knowing that the help was out there all along. And I just had to be brave enough to reach out there and grasp it just one more time. And here is the actual epilogue to my story. My name is Allison Lee. It used to be Allison Briggs, but then I got married. It is the year 2024, and I am now unbelievably 41 years old. I live in a nice house in Darrell Country with my husband and partner of 21 years and 3 very silly, very spoiled, very naughty cats. I am in active recovery from complex trauma, and I am a victor over everything that has passed before. And how do I know this for sure? Because I'm still here. And I am now telling you my recovery story, which would have been completely unthinkable this time 3 years ago. And I have a remarkable team of peer workers and an exploded appendix to thank for it all. Thank you so much for listening to my story today.
And now Allison joins us. Thank you so much for that recording. Do you know, like, given all speakers given the opportunity to either do that talk in person and or the recording was obviously offered. And I'm not necessarily asking you what was your motivation to do that. I just want you to say from me to you, like the way that landed and the way I connected with that was like you were right here. So yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, it was
Thanks. I
wonderful.
was a little bit worried about the connection, but considering my anxiety issues, and I mean, I'm a perfectionist, always have been. I'd rather just sort of get it right and put it out there and not worry about it, rather than just sort of being anxiously looking from the screen, looking to my writing, looking from the screen, looking to my writing. So I'm glad that landed well. Thank you so much.
Sure,
You're doing an amazing job today, Ben.
Oh, no worries. I was going to say that's the story of my life right now, being that I have other things other than just the camera in front of me. I just want to say very quickly is that right now, anyone who's obviously tuning in, if you click the resource section, you've got I'm just not sure how long they'll be up. Maybe for the nature of when we're actually talking, they may be up there longer than that. But as far as information for consumers, carers, and other people affected, there's some really, really great resources in there. So welcome. We do have a couple of questions. I'll just give me 1 sec. I'm just going to bring that up. My little chat box has come down. First one being there's one that I'll need to interpret. It's quite long, and I'll get to that. Hi, Allison. You're not the first person who's stated Auslan as being helpful in their recovery. What do you think about Auslan and its potential positive impact?
I want to first just acknowledge the deaf community and thank them for the wonderful gift of their language that has changed so many lives. It has not only sort of helped me re-engage with the world by sort of increasing my self-esteem by learning a different skill, but it also had some really good knock-on effects, because when I was suffering from non-verbal distress, I could communicate with signs. I taught my husband a few basic signs, like I could be, I'm scared, or I'm depressed, or, I'm happy. And it worked when I wasn't able to speak. And I know that there have been some people with non-verbal autism that have been able to use Auslan in that way as well. So, I mean, it not only helped me cope with my distress, it was just probably one of the best gifts I've ever been given, Auslan. It's a really helpful skill for anybody, actually. It's a really cool skill.
For sure.
And a beautiful language, yeah.
And it makes a lot of sense, like in just very basic terms, to have another like method or mode to be able to communicate, right? And like I'm sure that many in attendance would know the power of non-verbal communication in general. The very nods that we're giving each other are all these social cues, and moving all the way to basically being able to outwardly express through signing, like how I'm feeling in the moment when maybe I can't find my voice.
For sure.
That's beautiful. I love that. Also, I just wanted, someone did ask, how can they get in contact with you? So I'm just mindful that with all the different speakers, I'm not going to ever assume that people are going to want the same kind of access or particular topics they might not want to talk about. So I just wondered, without a filter, what you might encourage people to do, what you feel is within your capacity. Yeah.
You can get in contact with me. I'm happy to be emailed. I think I've given my email to the Finding North people. You can also get in contact with me on my LinkedIn. That's fine.
Cool.
But being an agoraphobe, it also sort of applies to social media networks as well. So I'm not over every network, just LinkedIn reluctantly. I'll add that there too. Yeah.
Yeah, I completely relate to that as well. The group chats, the inbox management, the emails, it's a stimulating, it's a lot. Sure, there's a lot of people that resonate with that. I had a question, which was, do you think Wendy's words and some of these others you mentioned, you will recover? This very assumptive and very finite and hope-filling language of you will. I wondered if in that validation, how pivotal that was for you.
Well, Wendy was an adorable woman, and when she said you will recover, and it was the way she framed it, as if to say, what you're doing right now, they're nothing more than skills that are unhelpful, but you can actually alter those skills and learn new skills. And that will actually put you on the path to having an adaptive life, having a better life, having a more functional life. Because the word recovery is quite triggering for a lot of people. So when she said you will recover, I had to define what recovery meant to me. That wasn't up to her, it was up to me. So I could do that later with my team of peer workers, but that was the gift of it. You will go on this path and you will learn these new skills and you can live a better life.
Yeah. I love hearing that stuff because obviously, in the line of work that I do, facilitation, mental health skills, communication skills training, often people might, when I invite them to share those kinds of things, it's not uncommon that people might say that a healthcare professional, peer worker or someone of the sort didn't provide that kind of that powerful support that you received. And I deeply empathize with that. I've been to a few professionals that, despite their pieces of paper hanging on the wall, and I've got nothing but respect for academia, that's not been my path, but that just the difference of experience and how pivotal that can be to go back into the home environment or to go to the internet because of the damaging to the trust in the professional structures and titles that exist out there. So yeah, that's I love that. Just if the audience and yourself could just give me one quick moment, because I'm just going to read this question. I just want to screen because it's quite large. So if you could just bear with me for one moment. Okay. Just trying to see the question that's okay. Well, actually, there's been a flooding of questions as I've gone to read that one. So while we won't have the full time to do that, I wanted to squeeze one more in. Well, firstly, there's a comment from a few people. You're amazing and inspiring. Thank you so much. I love how it was inappropriately funny and engaging.
I am inappropriately funny all the time.
Love that. And John also saying that your powerful testimony for non-clinical impact rings my bells. What do you see as the best possible expansion of these support actions in the community once we've sort of pushed upstream from ED and the crisis events, once we've moved beyond that? And just being mindful, sorry, Allison, I don't mean to rush you, but just a concise answer would be appreciated.
Yeah. Okay, if I could actually wave a magic wand, I would actually expand the peer workforce to make it the forefront of all mental health services, because I think that the power of connecting with someone with a lived experience, it really can't be understated. And someone with a lived experience is going to get it, whereas the clinician might not. And that is what's made the difference to my recovery. Absolutely. My story is about the transformative power of peer workers. Absolutely.
Love that. Yeah. And honestly, in my own story, it's exactly the same deal. The professional help played a massive part, AOD counseling, psychologists, all kinds of professional biomedical, Western diagnostic biomedical sort of professionals. But then also just those lived experience circles, which inspired me to run men's circles for blokes, just a safe environment to talk about what's real and alive. So peer-led lived experience spaces that are safe. I love it.
I love my
it.
peer workers.
Yes, I can see that. I can see it oozing out of you. So thank you so much. We've had the pleasure.
Thank you, Finding North people. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, audience. Lovely. It's been wonderful. Thank you for all your nice comments.
Connect with Allison. Keep the conversation going and those questions coming through. Thank you so much, Allison. I can't wait to see you again.
Oh, thank you. Thanks, Ben.
Thanks for watching Explore More Perspectives 2024 on Finding North Network's YouTube channel. Find out more by visiting findingnorthnetwork.com.au or email info@findingnorthnetwork.com.au.